What's up, guys? Next day with the VR6 build. Yesterday my brother did not clean off the transmission like he was supposed to, but I figured out what I'm gonna do with the headers, and we're gonna use the stock headers that come on the VR6. My brother cut off the flanges, luckily, and we need a T4 flange because we're gonna use the GT40, which, unlike this old setup, has a T3 flange. So I was looking literally for hours, and I found it was Streetcar Fabrication T4200D, I think, is the part number for that flange, and it is a T4 flange, and it has two 2-inch inlets, and that will allow me to make these two headers merge into that one collector slash T4 flange that will go to the turbo. My brother works in a machine shop, and this is currently, it's really close to 2-inch on the flange. It's probably like 1 3/4 on the inside diameter. So he's gonna bore this out to 2-inch, and well, bore both of these out, and then we'll be able to loop these around to that Streetcar Performance flange that he bought yesterday. Also bought some stainless steel. I think they're just U's, and there's 2 of them, so we'll be able to hopefully use them in order to come out of this one into that little collector flange for the turbo. Researching takes so much time, dude. It took hours to figure out what I'm gonna do with this turbo setup and the manifold. So today at work, he said a guy is going to bring an engine stand. Eurowise makes this thing. I think I already told you about. I already said this. They make a plate that bolts to them 6 threaded. I think they're M10 by 1.5. I could be mistaken, but they're most likely 10s. This is a plate that my brother got from work yesterday, so I need to make holes, clearance holes for this to bolt on there, and then we're gonna weld on a pipe which will slide into the engine stand, and he'll be able to bolt that engine on to the engine stand and still be able to get to the clutch, all the timing stuff. Dude, it'll be freaking sweet, because usually there's little arms on the stand and they connect to all this crap and you cannot get to this. By doing it over here, you can get to everything. And I think Eurowise sells a kit. It's like 150 bucks or something, but we're gonna make it because we're cheap, and I'd rather make something than buy something. So today is a new day. Got a late start. My freaking stupid phone, dude, I had to restore it, and it's back to factory settings now, so I'm like trying to re-download all my apps. But anyway, about this engine, this car, yesterday my brother, actually he bought it, an engine stand. It's just a good old Harbor Freight one. This dude said he had a V8 on it, so surely it'll hold the VR6. That came with this, which is what goes into that little female right there. Has these arms on it, and that plate that I made yesterday, this thing, I just laid out the holes once again, and there's this hole, this hole, this hole lines up, and these 3 I need to drill, so 3 out of the 6 line up. That one, and that one need to be drilled, and then this plate will mount the VR on it, and the VR will basically mount right here after you take these arms off. So if you got one of these engine stands, which is like the most typical engine stand you could possibly get, you can just drill that plate and it'll freaking bowl right up. So I'm gonna drill this out, and I got my holes already marked. Oh yeah, cleaned the transmission off yesterday. Dude, it came out looking way better. So pretty hyped about that. Just Dawn and pressure washer, scrub brush, break that oil down, break the surface tension of the water down a little bit, get up under that grease, lift it off, good to go. So I'm gonna drill this plate, get this engine mounted, and get this project going. that one, and this head has to come off. Actually, it sits on the stand like pretty good. You just gotta watch it because the wheel is right there and the engine's right here and it's close to the pivot point of like tipping over. And if you scoot this back, dude, this wheel starts coming up and it's like kind of not on like a good balance point, but whatever. So we got to take off the serpentine. Alright guys, so she's coming apart nicely. I got valve cover off. You have to take the thermostat housing off because there's that little bolt, M6 bolt, that you can't get to. I'm about to take the side cover off, get this on top dead center, compression, and by taking this off, oh shoot, I gotta take out the cam chain tensioner. You can see the intermediate shaft and you will be able to, oh yeah, I gotta take this bracket off, that bracket off because it's on the head and I just want to like make sure it's gonna come off easy. But with that side cover off, you can see the intermediate shaft and make sure it's on the right, in the right location before you go taking a cap apart, because when you put it back together, dude, it's got to be the same way, and it's just good practice to take stuff apart the way you're gonna put it back together so you're kind of familiar with the procedure. But dude, the old VR's looking good. He does have, I don't know if I said, Super Tech valve springs, titanium retainers, and stock cams. Dude, it's pretty much, it's a very simple build. Basically the main thing is just pistons and new bearings, all new crap. The only reason the pistons need to be replaced is because this engine is not turboed from the factory and it has like, I don't know, 11-to-1 compression. It has like high compression ratio and it's not good for a turbo application. So you got to get the 8.5-to-1 pistons. And right now we're getting the compression by using that head spacer, which you can see it kind of mushed down because the gasket had a little rivet in it. But it's all the way around the engine. And there's a company in the UK for these 24 valve VR6 2.8 liters and all the other VR6 like variations too, especially these because they're hard to find. The head spacer, shoot, I just had the name. It's Rushworth Performance, and they got a website. They sell these things. Dude, this one's fine. Actually, they had a little problem with their old ones. It was like skewed over a little bit, and we worked with them quite a bit. There's two of them that are bad. They're not good. And the machine was like messed up, but they sent us like the first one that was like good. And dude, it's freaking, they got it all squared away. It's like good to go. And they're cheap too. They're not that expensive. But dude, I'm in Ohio, I'm in the US, and it takes like 3 weeks. So if you're building one of these engines, you need to have time for that, or just pay up for shipping because it takes a minute. I'm gonna take the side cover off, get this thing on top to center compression, and tear this head off. Oh, we do have ARP 2000s for the head studs, and I forget what company he bought them from, 034 Motorsports I think, but ARP does not offer a kit for these. It is a kit that's put together by like a secondary like company, and they're a middleman. They put it together, they make a little bit of money, I'm guessing. And yeah, ARP head studs to hold this thing down while it's being turboed. So yeah, head studs, we can reuse them, which is nice. And he also has ARP connecting rod bolts, not in this engine, but in the other engine. And yeah, so ARP is definitely the way to go. He's gonna use, I think his clutch came with bolts for the flywheel because we were like debating on that. I know his differential has ARP bolts holding the wheel, the crown wheel I think it's called, the spur gear, I don't know what you call it, the gear onto the diff, because the stock diff has rivets and you got to drill them out and you got to put bolts in it, so you might as well use ARP. Tear this thing down. Kind of thought I would take this clutch off to give you guys a better look at this cam chain, and I noticed that the clutch, dude, See how it moves? So I'm guessing that flywheel has some kind of a like sprung, I know it's a dual mass flywheel, which they say to get rid of if you're doing like super high RPM, super high horsepower, because they come apart. And I think that's what they're talking about. So, and I did notice, well, the few times that I drove that thing, when you would let the clutch out, it would kind of like lurch, like back and forth. And it was probably this. Dude, that's a lot of slop. So I'm kind of interested to see what this looks like. I don't know, I figured I'd just shout that out. This is a stock clutch, 24 valve VR6. Dude, I don't know. I'm gonna take it apart though, see what's up. Dude, this clutch is weird. It's a weird, alright, so that's the clutch disc pressure plate. And we got the dual mass flywheel, and dude, that is, you can't be boosting with something like that. That's weird. There's springs in here, I'm guessing, somehow. And I'm interested to see the backside, because that can't happen. So there's a lot of oil on this. I don't know if it's that seal, or I don't know if it's up here leaking down. They got a little button head screw right there holding this gasket on. I'm gonna take that off, take the side cover off, and we can look at this timing. Alright guys, just a quick thought when I'm gonna reassemble this. All these that I just took out, that are basically where the flywheel is, these are all getting red Loctite. They cannot come out. It'll be bouncing around in there. Get in the clutch, get in the starter gear. Dude, red Loctite. So the first thing you gotta do, you gotta get down on the ground and turn your crankshaft over until my light works. That little notch on the block lines up with that little dash and the pulley on the crank. So that lines up. You want to get your plate in your camshafts. I made this one. I don't know if you can read that. 24 valve VR6 cam lock plate. It's all out of focus, but whatever. These little notches, and that fits in. Perfect. Both sides. You got that. Come over to your cams, and there's an arrow on these camshafts. It's right there on the exhaust. There's an arrow that my marker's on, and there's also a little cutout on this little journal right here, and them two need to align on this is the exhaust side. So we come over to the intake side, and hold on, my arm's getting tired. Okay, you also have arrows on the intake side of the cam. So there's arrows there, and then it lines up with that little dash on that little dash that I got marked. So these two camshaft sprockets are lined up with the plate in, with it on top dead center. You can tell it's on top dead center because this is cylinder 1. These two lobes are up, these two lobes are up. This cylinder is on top dead center compression. So you come over here, and these are good. Crankshaft's good, and this is the intermediate shaft. So the intermediate shaft has that yeah, you can see it. That dash on the block, and it also has a little hump and a little V. That doesn't, them don't, none of these do, except that one has that little V notch, and that lines up with the block on the intermediate shaft. So I'm gonna point this out. This is with all the covers removed. This has to be tight because that's where the tensioner goes with this cover on. So you can't have that like super loose, like on one side, and these guides not, like all the guides have to be in. This has to be tight because that's where the tensioner goes. So the manual also says that between this arrow on that camshaft sprocket and this arrow on this camshaft sprocket, there should be 16 teeth, or 16 pins, my bad, on the chain. So from this arrow, we're not going to start there because that's past. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and we're lined up with the arrow, which is kind of has a glare on it. But we're lined up with that arrow. If we go one more, that's 17, that's too many. Obviously that's past you can clearly see that. So there's 16 in between both of these. Intermediate shafts lined up with that little tick. There's also a spot on the bottom where you can line it up. I'll turn the engine over here in a second and verify that that's also another way to time it. But that has a little V and it's lined up with the block mark. This is lined up and that's in. I'm gonna turn this engine over and verify that this can be timed basically with the intermediate shaft on the opposite side of where it is now. We're running this is another little quickie. We're running it's a 2 mil thick head spacer plate to reduce the compression of this engine because we turboed it. You can see the plate in there, it's nice and clean while everything else is all nasty. But these guides, we were messing with, geez, for like a month. We were grinding this one down, and there's like a lot of info of people grinding these down in order to get this to fit. It's super tight because it raises the head, and the slack is not where it exactly should be because this is up too high. Like it's gonna tilt everything, which is one like downfall of a compression spacer, head spacer. So on this cover, which goes right here, you can see the two little solenoids. We had to grind down that the cam chain tensioner, and then also you can see where we ground, and then there's a big boss on that threaded part, and we had to grind all that down in order to relieve some tension in order to get this guide to fit without it just smacking that boss on this casting. So we had to grind that down. If I can set this down, I can point it out. But this ground down that quite a bit. You can see that's super shiny, that's super shiny. Grind it all down in order to get this thing to work with the spacer plate in there. So, I mean, that's one downfall with running a spacer plate. You can run the stock pistons with it. We did here. He is now going with aftermarket JE pistons, and that's going to correct all the compression problems. So I'm going to turn this engine over and show you guys that it can be timed opposite of where it is now. All right, guys, so I'm going to turn this engine over. There's one. Luckily, the plugs are out. All right, so there's one revolution, and this cam plate is not going to fit. Clearly, it's on the opposite side. So if this doesn't fit, you need to go another. So I'm gonna go another 360 because the camshafts spin half the rate of the crank, and that's lined up. All right, that's lined up, so this should be lined up. That goes right in, no problem. And actually, it's a little bit hard to get in, but there we go. And I'm gonna come around. Those are lined up. Those are lined up. That there, that there. And instead of this being on the top, it is now on the bottom. And this engine is timed on either one of them. On this particular engine, not all engines, but this particular engine, you can time it on the bottom or top of that. But on the bottom, with this with the transmission on and this whole side cover thing, you can't see the bottom. So you're most likely going to time this from the top. But you can do either way with the engine apart, trans apart, whatever. And as long as the crank, intermediate, these are lined up, and this is in there. Mainly, you're going to get this in there, and you're going to have you're going to be confused about the cam sprockets because the cam sprockets will turn because of the variable valve timing without the chain on, and you're going to be most likely confused on what to do. But they got errors on that notch, not that one, on that one, on the cutouts. So that's pretty much how to time one of these things up. They're kind of confusing. We've timed this wrong and it just kind of misses, and you cannot get measuring blocks 208, 209. It'll say the camshaft angle, and I forget how far it'll go up, like 10 degrees or something. But if you check it in the VagCom, you'll be able to get them readings if it's timed right. If it's not timed right, dude, this thing is out of time. We've been there, done that. As long as you get them measuring blocks 208, 209, it might be a couple degrees off depending on how stretched out your cam chains are, but you'll get it if it's timed right. So let's take this head off.